In Robinson, Texas, mornings usually begin with the smell of coffee and the sound of school buses. But on November 9, 2005, the quiet was shattered by a desperate 911 call. Darlene Gentry, a former homecoming queen and beloved figure in her community, claimed she had found her husband, Keith, lying bloodied in their bed. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, yet Keith had been shot in the head. The scene was chilling, the stakes impossibly high. This seemingly tragic home invasion would soon reveal a dark and twisted betrayal that no film could capture. When officers rushed into the Gentry home, they discovered a stack of guns, oddly placed just outside the front door. One distinctive .22 revolver, a gift from Keith's own father, was missing from the cabinet. The investigation pivoted from a possible robbery to a suspicious homicide. Detectives noted the odd behavior from Darlene. Her tears felt delayed, her guilt expertly masked. And the missing weapon, it was not gone for long. Hidden underwater in a nearby pond, it held the key to unraveling the truth. State rangers set a trap. Under the cover of night, they persuaded the man with the pond connection to call Darlene again. Surveillance crews watched from hidden cameras as Darlene retraced her route back to that pond, searching the murky depths for the weapon she'd discarded. The footage was stomach-churning. It wasn't the frantic panic of a grieving widow. It was the quiet precision of someone disposing of damning evidence. When prosecutors showed the video in court, it broke the illusion of innocence forever. As the trial unfolded, the façade began to crack. The life insurance policies were exposed. Policies totaling nearly $750,000. Darlene's motivations looked coldly transactional. Her calm composure in court was unnerving. No one recalled her crying in real grief. Instead, they saw a woman orchestrating events with calculated emotion. Love had turned deadly, and she had become the architect of her own chilling narrative. Family testimonies painted a different picture. Keith's parents described a marriage strained under quiet resentment. Darlene had always been vivacious, a small-town charm personified, but friends whispered of recent tensions. Some said Keith seemed increasingly cautious, wary of her erratic mood swings. These warnings would be ignored until it was too late. As jurors watched the evidence build, the town's image of their local queen began to dissolve. The prosecution called expert witnesses. Psychologists spoke about narcissistic rage and entitlement. They described the psychopathic ease required to smile at strangers while sending bullets into someone you once vowed to love forever. Confronted with the facts, Darlene's defense began to unravel. Her attempts to redirect blame toward a fictional intruder collapsed under the weight of surveillance footage and precise timelines. The truth was no longer negotiable. It was undeniable. After hours of deliberation, the verdict was delivered. Guilty of murder. The shock in the courtroom was palpable, not for the result, but that someone so beloved had fallen so far from grace. Her sentence, 60 years behind bars without contact with her children, sent a ripple through Robinson. The woman once known for grace and beauty was now synonymous with betrayal. The police wasted no time. They quickly secured the crime scene and began digging into Keith and Darlene's history. What they discovered shocked them. Beneath the image of a loving wife and grieving widow, Darlene had a darker side. She wasn't just a nurse with a bright smile. She was a woman with secrets. Investigators learned that in the months leading up to Keith's death, Darlene had been making strange purchases. And one of those purchases included a burner phone, untraceable and used under a fake name. Who was she calling and why? A closer look at their marriage revealed even more red flags. Darlene had been pressuring Keith to take out a large life insurance policy. At first, Keith resisted, but eventually, probably trying to keep the peace, he gave in. Weeks before his death, he signed a policy worth $500,000, with Darlene as the sole beneficiary. That detail lit up alarms in the minds of investigators. Was this murder planned all along? And had Keith unknowingly signed his own death warrant? Ballistics results were soon in, and they brought the first big breakthrough. The bullet that had killed Keith matched a .22 caliber rifle. The murder weapon still hadn't been found, but the trace was enough. Investigators turned to those around Darlene, especially her family. That's when they zeroed in on her brother, a man with a criminal record and a history of violence. When asked about his whereabouts on the night of the murder, his answers were vague, evasive, but there was no solid proof, not yet. The town buzzed with rumors. People who once saw Darlene as the model nurse and devoted wife now whispered in grocery store aisles and church pews. Could she have done this? Could she have orchestrated the murder of her own husband? The idea seemed unthinkable, but the evidence was starting to stack up, and it all pointed in one direction. Detectives then got their hands on something that changed the game: Darlene's internet search history, and it was chilling. The searches were straight out of a horror movie. How to shoot someone and not get caught. Can police trace a bullet with no gun? Best time to kill your spouse. Each entry was more damning than the last. Darlene had clearly been planning something. The facade was cracking, and the woman once seen as a grieving widow now looked more like a cold-blooded killer. Investigators had enough to make an arrest, but they needed one final piece: the weapon. That's when an anonymous tip came in. Someone claimed to know where the gun was hidden. Acting quickly, detectives followed the lead to a rural property just outside of Robinson. There, buried under a shed, wrapped in plastic and duct tape, was a .22 caliber rifle. Forensic analysis confirmed it. This was the gun that killed Keith Gentry. And what was more shocking, Darlene's fingerprints were found on. The arrest was swift and dramatic. Darlene was taken into custody while working her shift at the hospital. Patients watched in stunned silence as the woman they trusted was led away in handcuffs. Her face was blank, emotionless. There was no fight, no denial, just cold acceptance. The community was stunned. People were divided. Some refused to believe it. Others said they always sensed something was off, but no one could have predicted this ending. During her interrogation, Darlene initially denied everything. She claimed the rifle had been stolen, that someone was framing her. But under pressure, her story began to crumble. Confronted with the mountain of evidence, search history, fingerprints, the insurance policy, she broke. Not with a full confession, but with silence. The kind of silence that screams guilt. Prosecutors moved quickly. The case against her was airtight, and the trial date was set. In court, the prosecution painted a devastating portrait. They showed Darlene as a woman driven by greed, deception, and calculation. A wife who saw her husband not as a partner, but as a payday. The defense tried to claim circumstantial evidence, but the jury wasn't buying it. The digital footprints, the hidden weapon, the life insurance, all of it pointed to one conclusion. And after a tense few days of deliberation, the verdict was announced: guilty. Darlene Gentry was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Keith's family wept in the courtroom. Justice had been served, but the wounds ran deep. A husband, father, and friend had been taken in the most brutal way imaginable. And the one behind it was the person who had once vowed to love him forever. The case of Keith and Darlene Gentry left a mark not just on Robinson, Texas, but on anyone who ever thought they truly knew someone. Thank you for watching. This case is a chilling reminder that sometimes the greatest dangers come from those closest to us. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another true crime deep dive. And let me know in the comments, what shocked you the most about Keith Gentry's story? Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.